All right, 4 p.m., the work session for the mayor and council is called to order. Mr. O'Brien, call roll, please.
Mayor Augustine,
Present.
Commissioner Carter, Commissioner Forsythe,
Here.
Mr. Crowe,
Here.
Commissioner Gucci, second.
Okay, moving on through the agenda, item 3, a special presentation, Mr. Ryan Martin.
Thank you very much, Todd, council members. It's great to see you all. Since we all were together in person, but it's always a pleasure to come out and see you all. A lot has been going on since we last talked. We certainly had a very productive end of the summer, which I think is really where I'd like to start off, because I do want to talk about our budget requests and how they tie into the recent Board of Revenue estimates that were released about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'll start with the good news first, because, you know, I want to ease into the bad news while you guys are eating these delicious cookies, and hopefully not paying attention to the bad news. We had a really productive discussion at MACO. Clearly, there's a lot of need for us to jingle the attention of the state regarding our needs for our state water sustainability projects. Clearly, with the support you all have given over the last few years along Coney, there is a substantial need for us to seek state support in a time where money's tight. So to the culmination of Mayor, the council, Hayden, and Patrick, we were able to coordinate a meeting with the Secretary of MDE, her team. We also had Delegate Buckle with us, and we had the county and the county administrator and the county attorney all at this meeting at MACO talking about our needs, giving them a very contextual understanding historically of what we've been working with and dealing with over the last few years. Through the presentations by all of us and the mayor, I think it was a very sort of sticker shock in some respects from the secretary to see what has been going on, and to kind of get into more of the granular understanding of what you all have been kind of lifting and responsible for with our neighbors in the area. It became very apparent that the state, particularly MDE, wanted to help your needs, and they understood that yes, you all have been carrying a lot of weight. Let's see how we can provide our support. And it was at the conclusion of that meeting that I came away with, and I think all of us really kind of came with a sense of positivity that the state's in our corner, and even with tightness and the frugalness of state money, we have to be here and we have to help support Frostburg.
I think it's also a matter of risk reduction, because, with the drought that we had a
Yes.
couple years ago,
Yes.
in the end, the state would end up having to pay a lot more to rescue us if we
Right.
ended up, needing it, so.
Yeah,
it's
I
risk
think even
reduction.
Hayden mentioned,
Yeah.
some of the issues related to the drought, and just at some point in time, if we see the University of Frostburg increase the numbers of students, if that is going to be a heavier burden on the water needs out in Frostburg here. So I came away with the meeting very productive. The very next day, we had a reception, and we actually saw the secretary and her team come out, and she came up to me side and said, "Thank you for the meeting. Please tell your team it was a very informative and very beneficial meeting. We're here to help take care of you guys. We're going to be here to help support you." So that was wonderful. And then we went into September really building out what our requests were in a very specific matter of fact. So literally, I think you have copies of this letter. If not, I can resend it to you all. But essentially, we worked together to basically produce for the governor's office and the Secretary of Budget Management our formal request. And we broke down the $610,000 request into basically 4 projects. We were very deliberate on what those needs are and what contributions you all are putting into those projects already. So that was sent out to the governor's office. Secretary of DBM got it, received it, and then we also sent it out to the Secretary of MDE. All of them immediately responded saying, "Thank you, this is great." And following those responses, we actually met with those offices in person. We met with the governor's legislative office, detailed out with them our requests. It's on their radar. We met with Dylan Goldberg, who you are very familiar with. He said, "This is great. I want to know your priority list for this year." And then we had, right after Labor Day, a one-on-one meeting with the Deputy Secretary, Mark Cole, for budget management, along with Raquel. of staff for the secretary. We walked through all of these. All of them also said this is not only helpful, but you broke it down. It basically breaks down our guidelines. You've hit what we have asked for these types of requests. You're hitting and covering the areas that our state is looking at in terms of what we're going to be looking at in terms of investment. They also appreciate the fact that we've been so timely. When we look at the date of the requests in these meetings, we are having them prior to the agencies actually submitting their own budgets for the next FY,
Perfect,
calendar
yeah.
year. So we are essentially well ahead of the game. Following those meetings that we had, I actually have scheduled a meeting with the Senate Capital Budget Subcommittee Chair this coming Friday, Craig Zucker. The Senate has the budget this year, so it's essential for us to continue having more of the initial discussions this fall with the Senate members, and that's what we're doing. So in addition to meeting with Craig on Friday, I am going to be scheduling a meeting with the Vice Chairman of the Capital Budget Committee as well to inform them. And at some point, hopefully before the holidays, we are going to look at maybe doing a follow-up meeting with MDE. I think it's important for us just to continue to keep that dialogue going, and certainly providing updates on where we are in terms of what you all are doing independent of the state and the support. And then we'll probably close out December like we always do with the delegation presentation. So last year, Mayor Todd provided updates to the senator and the delegates for the area on what we're looking for next year. We'll probably be doing that sometime around December with Senator McKay and others. So we'll close out basically the next few months with essentially everything that we want to do from a timeline standpoint for budget. And we'll have essentially the budget will be released the first or official second week of January. My hope is that maybe we can get some information prior to on whether or not we've made it in the budget or where we stand in the budget. So that could potentially happen before the holidays. So obviously I'll keep you all apprised on what that looks like as well. So that's the good news. We are certainly making some real headway with our needs, and appreciate all of the support and information bothering these two gentlemen with numbers, because they've certainly been able to provide them in a very quick and expedient fashion. Where we are though with the state, like I said, I feel like a broken record. The last year was sort of at this time okay in terms of numbers, but we were looking at a really tumultuous, outlook for this past fiscal year. Well, I think the same could be said again this year. It's almost like Groundhog Day. The Board of Revenue estimates, they met a few weeks back, and on a positive, we ended in the green for the fiscal year FY25, which ended on June 30th. We actually had about $500 million, so $500 million, I guess, for reserve funds for the fiscal year ending, which is great, but what looks ahead is looming and sort of disparaging. The numbers you can see on the cover letter and the chart, there's a lot of red. And you can see that those are not good for the state of Maryland, where we're looking at next year's fiscal year and the out years of fiscal years. Basically, the board that are made up of the comptroller, the treasurer, and the secretary of DDM, they approved general funds, the general fund revenues, I should say, to about $26.67 billion for this current fiscal year, so FY26. That's about a 3.6 increase from our last fiscal year. So not too bad. Could be better, but it's still about a $19 million write-down from March. So again, you're going to hear this record being played where there's some good, and then here comes the worst part of it. For fiscal year FY27, which they're planning for right now, which starts July 1st of 2026, those revenue estimates are projected to be about $27.13 billion, which is only about a 1.7% growth. And you can see that at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Again, when you contrast that to fiscal year 25 revenues, they grew to 4.1% overall. So we're sloping downward, not upward. There's several reasons for the write-down, and I can get into talking a little bit about the political nuances of that, but let's just talk a little bit about the bare bone numbers. We finished strong on our personal income tax, surprisingly. In FY '25, we ended with collecting over $264 million above the estimate, which is about a 7% gain. That's a great surprise, but the momentum's not going to last because growth basically slows down to about 5.3% in this current fiscal year. Then it precipitously drops down to just 2.2% in FY '27. So again, estimated, right. But when you look at the estimates coming out from BRE, and we're just seeing where things are playing out with the government shutdown,
And all the federal workers being fired. and stuff.
that's part of the impacts that we're seeing. So, again, there's some positive on the personal income, but in the out years, it goes down. One of the biggest Achilles heels that we're dealing with is our corporate income tax. Our corporate income tax revenues fell $47 million short in FY '25. It actually gets worse currently in our FY '26. That is dropping to another $147 million, which is a negative 4.5%. And then it goes down again by another 2.4% in the next year. So again, I can talk a little bit about some of that political nuances and, you know, depending upon how you look at how Maryland's makeup is in terms of generating revenue and corporate money, we can talk a little bit about that because that was part of the discussion and has been an ongoing discussion, not only at the BRE but also in Annapolis. But I'll say that the sales and use tax, we saw that modestly grow in FY '25, excuse me. That was up by $72 million. Once again, great news for this past year, but what do we look like in the next couple of years? The forecast for FY '26, we're actually seeing reductions by $35 million. And that could potentially go down in the next year after that. The volatility, as you said, Councilwoman, about where we stand with our shutdown and the impacts that took place in the very beginning of the year and things that impacted because of DOGE and all that, that's all impacting the state because the state essentially, and I'll quote the governor when he made this point in one of his committee bill presentations, the identity of Maryland is we are a state made up of feds, meds, and eds. And when you see a lot of those areas being funded, generally speaking, by federal dollars, those federal dollars are being taken away. That's a substantial loss of the revenue and income that comes into the state to make it viable and continue functioning. And that's where I think some of the political commentary comes into play saying, well, if we know that that is going to be at least the forecast for the next couple of years, what are we doing to help incentivize private enterprise to come here in Maryland? What are we doing to help support our current businesses to stay? And that's a larger conversation for Annapolis. And I think the governor is trying to put in some bills. This past year, he put in the Decade Act bill that was trying to rejuvenate some of that private investment. He's committed to wanting to see that, but I think those are broader conversations that he has to have with the General Assembly and how those, you know, potential incentives are going to positively impact our outlook and what the immediate is going to be on that fiscal impact as well. We talked about, again, the headwinds of the federal impact, the job losses there. We've also just seen a very slowed down labor market in Maryland. There was a recent federal or national report that came out showing Maryland dead last in terms of economic growth. So again, I think those are a conflation of a lot of things that are causing where we stand in Maryland in terms of our budget. The outlook right now for where we stand, there is still, even though we've increased our revenues through the budget bill this year of $1.3 billion in new fee increases and taxes, we're still looking at a structural deficit in the out years. So to say that we are, you know, not out of the woods is an understatement. There's going to be a lot of hard decisions, even more so this year than potentially this past year in Annapolis, in terms of how are we going to right the ship on balancing not only the budget, the Constitution, but how are we balancing our long-term fiscal pocketbooks so that we're viable and we're in the green. And I'm not quite sure right now where the plan or strategy is for the General Assembly and how we're going to get there with the governor. We're also going into a election cycle, so there's going to be added pressure there to make some critical decisions on how do we, try to adjust the budget without putting more burden on the taxpayers, especially after this past year. How this is gonna impact the county, as you know, everything kind of trickles downward. So whatever the state decides, you know, to pass on to the county, we're gonna be watching that very closely alongside with our partners at MML and also with MACO. I would imagine, you know, again, we talked a moment ago about what is the priorities of MML and MACO. I would have to believe, and I'm only speculating, that MACO might fall themselves into that, one of those priorities of how do we add new revenue or modernize revenue for the locals. I'm sure that would be a broader conversation, not only with MML, but with MACO and certainly in Annapolis. So we'll be tied very closely over the next couple months on prioritizing obviously our budget requests. But when we get into January, I'd say the two major focal points that we're gonna be dealing with is gonna be budget and energy issues, at least for the next two to 3 years. Those will be the top two issues. And then I think the third will be housing. So there's a lot of weight on the plate here on what we're looking at. I wish I could say there was more positive information, but the numbers that you're seeing here really don't lie. Any questions on the charts or the BRE information, or would you hopefully like to see come out of these conversations I'm having in Annapolis before we go into Christmas? Is there anything I can bring back to our delegation prior to the end of the year? Because again, we are going to be closing those gaps over the next couple of months before we go into 2026. But is there anything that you all need for me to prioritize in these discussions?
And we haven't for sure decided on what our big asks are going to be at the General Assembly this year. We have some ideas, and we've had, those preliminary discussions with you too.
Yeah.
But we haven't officially decided yet, so once we do that, we'll have more.
I did talk with somebody from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and they have some proposed legislation we're going to introduce about making it easier to build affordable housing and also incentivizing landlords who own housing stock that's not being used for housing.
Okay.
So hopefully, that will help, this, and it's not something that then will require extra revenue. It's
Right.
just, and then if we have more affordable housing, have, people then, paying property taxes and stuff,
Right.
so that will help.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, like I said, I think the third biggest topic will be housing. And I know the governor has been very ardent on this subject where, we need to find, more housing. I mean, cost of living in Maryland is not cheap to begin with. And, for the folks that are trying to, buy their first house, whether it's a single family or even a townhouse, the numbers are just, skyrocketing. So, I think even for areas like this, or even just south of us in Cumberland, affordable housing is needed. That will help, as you said, bring in new revenue from a property value standpoint, but also bring in a new, sort of cohort of people to the area, which could then generate new business and new opportunities for economic growth. The question is how the package will be unveiled.
Sorry.
No problem. The governor's package, right now, obviously will not be unveiled until January. One of the things that is interesting in my conversations recently is that in years past, you couldn't really ask the agencies, what are you working on for the next year? I've been hearing rumors that we now can make asks generally on what are some of your concepts that you may be bringing forward next year. So I'll be working on trying to schedule some meetings with some of those agencies to find out what, they're looking at for next year. That could give us a general forecast to see where we may play in those sandboxes, whether it be, something tied to commerce for business incentive tax credits or something around housing, or anything else for that matter. So, I'll try to get some more intel and recap that out before the end of the year.
How likely do you think it is that, that localities then would be allowed to collect some of those, again, my mind is a little.
Modernizing
Yeah, the structure.
revenue alternatives.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I really do need to go.
No
This is
problem.
from my bank.
No problem. That's a great question, and I think we saw some of that last year with MML on one of their amusement tax,
Yeah.
presentations. This dates back when I was a staffer for Senator Jennings years ago. There were talks about hotel tax, rate increases and, small little fees here and there that the locals can do. Given the responsibilities that the locals have had to take on with the blueprint, the Kerwin Commission, the education response, funding, some of the responsibilities that changed over recently about locals having to take on more of a share on, falsely incarcerated, individuals and paying out those dollars. Now that's going to be part of responsibility on the locals. More of that burden, if it comes on to you all from the state, then the locals are going to have to find ways of, like I said, increasing or creative way of, your revenue increases. And unfortunately, when you say the word modernizing revenue increases, that's sort of a long form of saying, how can we look at either instituting new fees, increasing fees, or
On
tax
that,
structures?
one of MML's legislative priorities last year, if you remember, was that optional, or the authorizing legislation that allowed localities to impose like a 2% tax or something. Did that pass?
That, the amusement tax.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
No, it did not.
Good, okay.
But, again, if we're talking about the priority of looking at modernizing
Right.
revenue, it's a very expansive and general way of saying maybe everything's sort of on the table.
Do you think that's gonna come back this year?
I'll have to ask
I mean, that's fine.
MML,
Okay.
and I'll have to see what they want to do.
We didn't hear anything about it up there,
No.
did we? Not, this week when we were up there, we didn't hear anything.
I'm very curious to see, as what I've always said, we see the devil's in the details on some of these bills. If MML is looking as their single only priority about increasing revenues, I'd like to see what that bill looks like. And so typically MML and NACO have always been very proficient about getting bills either pre-filed or having bills somewhat prepared so that they can, cultivate, grassroots support from local, support of municipalities and the counties. I would have to believe they're probably in draft form, but I'll have to check with Teresa at MML to see what that looks like and get back to it.
If I recall correctly, we decided that we weren't in favor of that anyway.
Right,
Yes.
no, we weren't.
We weren't. I remember we had a very open conversation about that one. And we did not take any position on that at all. And if that were to come up, or if the bill in its whatever form, obviously I will share that with this group right away and have a broader conversation about that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I have. Any other questions for me, Mayor Todd, members? Well, again, thank you for letting me come up here. It feels nice to have some fresh air in my lungs after 3 weeks of pneumonia. So enjoy the sugar shock of the cookies, and by all means, feel free to follow me anytime for anything else.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
All right, next item on the agenda, it looks like Mr. Hovatter, we're gonna talk about smoke alarms.
That is correct. I didn't print enough for everybody besides the council, so I apologize.
I think everybody else has already heard me. There's two spares since Adam's not here. Whoever.
You are welcome to, but not obligated.
I'm gonna head back into Cumberland,
Okay.
because I gotta see Wes,
Sure.
talk about his budget stuff.
Please catch up.
Yeah. Please catch up though,
Yeah.
from our conversation.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy. You're welcome. Enjoy all.
And thanks for the cookies.
Oh, enjoy the sugar.
Try not to break it.
All right, we ready? Yep. Okay, so I'll just be as short as I can on this. Just to give you a little update as far as the rental housing inspection stuff is going, it's kind of where I come into this issue. Since we started doing the rental inspections in-house I've conducted 56 inspections roughly since the first week of August. And in gathering that information from doing those inspections, just this little tidbit that I came up with, the average length of inspections, time period between inspections, has been about 9.5 years overall of those 56 inspections averaged out. So the most recent inspection that I found was 3 years ago. The longest inspection was 20 years, which how, why, I don't know. That's the information that I could gather out of our records. So there has been a lag in between inspections. We can attribute some of that to the whole COVID process and everything being stopped and shut down creates a backlog. So that just kind of gives you a little hint of where we're at moving forward with this. Of those 56 inspections, 50% or more of them are not in compliance with the smoke alarms. Moving into that, in this little packet that I gave you, if you take a look at the pictures, this was 158 East College Avenue in 1984. 2 fatalities. It was a college rental. The second picture, 82 East Main Street in 2010. 2 fatalities. 2014, 115 Bowery Street, 1 fatality. October of 2021 was Braddock Estates, 1 fatality. And then our most recent fatality was in July of 24 on Welsh Hill. Of the first 3, there was a claim by the landowner, there was a smoke detector by the property owner. State Fire Marshal's office couldn't verify. 82 East Main Street, there were smoke alarms in there, but they couldn't verify if they were operating. Smoke alarm found, inoperable, no batteries. Smoke alarm, no batteries. This one had a working smoke alarm. Why the gentleman perished, I don't know. So, just to put this in perspective, the way the city code is written, we adopted, and Dawn, I think you were the only one that was involved when the rental housing ordinance came in 2014. You were probably like a freshman at that time. So, in essence, we really didn't have anything involved in the rental housing ordinance the way it was written. The rental housing ordinance incorporates the IPMC. That's included in your package, the sections of the IPMC. And it dictates and explains where smoke alarms are required, what type of smoke alarms, how they're supposed to be powered. With a lot of the properties in Frostburg, we have older homes, obviously. The way the IPMC states, in older homes, battery-powered smoke alarms are acceptable if there is no renovation and no access to pool wires. So going forward into the Frostburg City Code, the section is in there also in your packet. Under smoke detectors, section A, subsection II, it states all smoke detectors within a rental unit must be interconnected, so that if one detector sounds, they all sound within the unit. We don't have that. Back in, this was adopted in 2014. Back in 1993, I did a lot of digging in the archives to try to get some information on this. 1993, there was a resolution passed, or an ordinance passed, it was 1993-7. It was adopted on July 6, 1993, and it required every 1, 2, and 3-story rental units to have AC-powered interconnected smoke alarms, one on each level of the building. So we have that. What the issue is the smoke alarm requirements have changed, where now they're required to be in bedrooms, common areas that are distant from, like, most of the alarms are in hallways and a common area in the downstairs and then in the basement. So what my issue is, our city code is the strictest code based on the IPMC and our code. There's a section out of the IPMC included in your package that states when two codes conflict, the strictest code is the one that rules. So our city code is the most strict code. So we have probably, at the very best, 50% of our rental properties in Frostburg don't meet what our code says. So, that's why I'm here. Because I, in good conscience, can't pass a structure to say it's all good, because my name's going on that paper. And I didn't make this code. You all didn't make this code. But we got to figure out how we make it work. Now, there are options available. Obviously, hiring an electrician, getting a third wire pulled to each detector. Another option that is available is radio frequency interconnected smoke alarms, which are approved in the IPMC, the International Fire Code, and the International Residential Code. Those sections are included in your package. But where we're at is the verbiage, all smoke detectors must sound. So if you get radio frequency smoke detectors for all your bedrooms and whatnot, there are options that I just Googling found on, First Alert, Kid, there's another manufacturer, Xsense, that make radio frequency smoke alarms. First Alert and Kid make a replaceable 110 or 120 volt AC powered detector that is interconnected radio frequency with radio frequency. There's a cost that goes along with all this. Just the Google numbers, don't hold me to it. You're looking at anywhere from $39 to $59 for a radio frequency detector.
Per detector, so.
Per detector,
In each unit, you're gonna need, let's say, at least 4 or 5.
depending upon how many bedrooms
Right.
and whatnot, yes. Trying to stay neutral on this, there's a cost of doing business. If you're a landlord, you're taking in revenue from renting. It's like owning a house. There is a cost. You got to put money back into your house to maintain it, to make it livable and keep it safe. I don't think $150 to $300, if the radio frequency is the way to go, is asking too much from a property owner.
It's cheaper than doing the hardwired one.
I would say yes, but we still got to get everything talking
Right,
to
yeah.
meet our code. And that's, you guys are the ones that control the city code. Whatever decisions you make, as long as it is something that is within the code and it's not conflicting or anything, I'll inspect to that level. On a personal note, I would say, I don't know whether I would lessen the code standards, only because heaven forbid something bad happens in 3 years and some attorney finds this old code and says, maybe if you wouldn't have changed things, people wouldn't have died. So, just to reflect on those photos, they're all rental properties. They were all rental properties. There have been other fatalities in Frostburg and privately owned. I didn't include them in. But going on the rental property scale, in 40 years, we average one death every 5 years in a fire. So, you know, there's a need to figure it out, so we're covering the city liability-wise, and I'm covering myself liability-wise. And I don't think there was any ill intent when this rental ordinance was adopted in 2014. With that, I think, I've been playing this in my head for a month now. The interconnected portion, I think that just got carried over from the previous, however the city code was written for. Maybe you all can tell me where I can find an old version of the city code to look at, because I went through all the ordinance books and everything, and I can't find anything.
Well, I can tell you, in 1981, my mother had our house on Main Street rewired,
Right.
and I forget which company, but they wired all the smoke detectors to all go off at the same time.
Right.
And that was in a 23-room house.
Right.
So at least back in the 1980s, they were looking at this.
Right.
So with that said, back then, even though it had that many rooms, it probably only had 3 to 5 smoke detectors, because you only needed one on each floor. So now, according to the code, you need
Yeah.
one outside of bedrooms and inside of bedrooms.
That's where my thing is, it's because the code's changed since this has been written for that, you know.
Right.
Say you got a place that has four that are hooked up, but it's another 4-bedroom house, and now all of a sudden you had to put a 10-year battery one in each of the bedrooms.
Right.
Because that's what they're wanting you to do now too.
Correct.
You know, then you're.
My question is this: this has been this section of the city code has not changed in 10 years or more. So how have these rental units been allowed to not stay out of compliance with this? for
This
so long?
this is something that, you know, I was looking at, and that was one of the things that I was gonna bring up. Why did this happen this way? I don't know. Was it oversight when the ordinance was adopted about the interconnect, you know, the verbiage about everything being interconnected? Maybe. Was it, and when this went into place, that's when everything gets subbed out for the outside
Third-party
contractors doing
inspectors.
the inspection.
I know they've checked that, because I know, like, we just had, the hotel was just inspected last year. And
Well,
the units have these kind of things, but
Right.
then we have a system throughout the whole.
well, speaking with one of the contractors, because I was
Uh-huh.
asking about the radio frequency ones,
Uh-huh.
you know, and that particular contractor said, well, keep in mind, they don't have to be hardwired on every level. And I said, that's per the IPMC. The city code states all smoke detectors have to be interconnected. And the question I got was, well, when did they change that? I said, it's been in the rental housing ordinance since 2014. And actually, I did find a version of the rental housing ordinance from 2010, and that verbiage was in there, and I couldn't find it again. I found it last week one day, and I looked again today, and I couldn't find it.
Let me ask another question. So I get it that they all have to be interconnected in each unit, and they all have to, I get that. So if you have a building that has 4 apartments in it, let's say, and one sounds in apartment A, do the smoke detectors in apartment B, C, D also sound?
Well, while I have your ear, I'm glad you brought that up, because the next line below that says, adjoining rental units in a rental property not furnished with approved fire and smoke separation assemblies shall be required to interconnect smoke detectors between units. The definition of adjoining is if we have a house and your bedroom wall and my bedroom wall share the same wall, that's an adjoining wall. So my interpretation of this is, if you have a 3-bedroom house and it's 3 separate units, if you will. If Donnie's apartment on the first floor he burns his breakfast or pizza or whatever, and his smoke alarm goes off, the guy up on the 3rd floor, his alarm should go off too. Now, there's a lot of houses that aren't connected like that. So that was another question that I was gonna pose upon you all to ponder on that.
So to add in a couple things, so first of all, thinking about when this happened, it was around the time of the fire over what is now Baker Bays. So specifically, what you're talking about, the interconnected part, I think was a focus on student rentals at the time that were essentially cut up to be multiple units, even though it was just one, originally meant to be one house or structure. So if there's a firewall between a duplex or things like that, they would not need to. A lot of apartments are built to, to a way that they wouldn't need to. But so also, if you look at the IPMC version, it has the same basically standards that ours does, but there were exceptions built in for older buildings that weren't under construction or weren't currently having the walls opened up. Ours did not put that same exception in when it came to the interconnectivity. It essentially, but the way ours is worded, the power part, that exception still exists.
Right, which is why, right.
Well, the battery operated,
Yeah.
but it does need to be interconnected in some way. It doesn't say hardwired necessarily, but.
The hardwired is, I think that is a confusing point to everybody. Hardwired specifically, I think, was driven for AC power, was the hardwire, when they said hardwire. The interconnective section is totally separate.
And now at the time, I don't think there was radio operated.
No, back then.
So it would have had to be
wasn't.
hardwired to be interconnected
Yes.
too, but now that it's not specifically worded that way. So I think a bit of the confusion comes down to is, I think some of the former inspectors thought that those exceptions counted for ours as well. But the way that we added it, on top of that, it meant that it did not for the interconnected. So part of it is I think the code could use some clearing up when it comes to verbiage, so that this is clear, especially with some of the changes that have happened since you now have to have smoke detectors, not just on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor. But in doing so, we wanted to make sure that if we change the verbiage, that's in line with what mayor and council thinks is best.
Go back to answer your question about how has this been going on for 14 years or whatever. If you read the city code states when, the outside contractors, third-party inspectors were hired, they were to be trained by the city and use the city-provided documentation, software, whatever.
Checklist, whatever they have.
Was there, a inconsistency of training, or was it a pack of papers handed to them and said, here you go, this is what you need to do? I don't know, that was way back before any of us were here. Was it an oversight and confusion by the inspector's part, thinking, well, I know what this is the standard of the IPMC, didn't get trained or didn't read the city code or whatever? I don't know. I just find it that when you all gave me this opportunity to do this, I did all the training for the IPMC to get certification, and I read the city code. So how I found it in 14 years and nobody else did, I don't know. So
If you look at our code and the IPMC, it pretty much says the same thing, except ours just doesn't have that one exception written. It says all smoke detectors, not the ones that are on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor. So,
Do you think that that was possibly the intention when they passed the code and it was just poorly written? Or do you think that it was intentionally written this way without the exception?
I'm leaning that it was probably an oversight, because there was, I'm sure in the older code, Donnie, maybe you know that the older code said, the smoke detectors had to be interconnected because a lot of the old houses, probably after 1993 when that ordinance was passed, the property owner spent a few bucks and had hardwired interconnected smoke detectors. So that might have been the verbiage and it just got carried over into this, I don't know.
I think a lot of stuff back then, they were trying to get it more in line with the IPMC stuff. You know, but again, who
Right.
knows whether.
And, you know, the fireman in me, obviously, I'd love to have hardwired, interconnected smoke detectors everywhere. And I've been in contact with the fire marshal's office trying to get some advice, recommendations from them. We don't do residential stuff. That's what I got. But just in conversation with the inspector I was talking to, we were both kind of on the same page. I would sooner have a house saturated with 10-year battery-powered smoke detectors and know I got one everywhere where I need them than fighting to get everything interconnected. But that's a personal note, or a personal matter for me to say that. That's the other thing. How do we fix it? I don't know. Physically interconnect the alarms, the wireless interconnection. Maybe we maintain the 3 that are, you know, for most properties that are interconnected on the different levels already, and do a verbiage change that allows the other detectors to be interconnected, you know, throughout the house. That might be an option.
Do we say something to keep the 3 and then whatever else is, you know, with this, and then kind of do the same thing they did? If somebody's gonna go in and do construction, it has to be brought up.
New construction has to meet this thing.
New construction or any
Which
major renovations.
that's how, you know, that's how it's
Uh-huh.
written now.
Yeah.
It's kind of in your court on what we do at this point. Like I say, I'm not a fan of lessening the code by any means. And my intent is not to cost
Mhm.
property owners a bunch of money.
Oh, I know.
You know, that's not my intent, but I'm the guy that's gotta go to bed and lay my head down and then, you know, hear a fire call go out and say, oh God, I just inspected that place, you know?
I have another question, which
sure.
is, how sensitive, are these a different kind of smoke alarm, the interconnected ones or the radio frequency ones? Because if a smoke alarm is overly sensitive, then every time you burn your toast,
Right.
smoke alarms go off all over the building. People
Correct.
start like trying to disconnect them because they're
Correct.
so, and then you have,
And then they're no good at all.
then they're no
Right.
good at all, yeah.
So, one of the things I would think about is kind of thinking about those two things separately, because, so there's interconnected within the unit and then interconnected within the building. So, if everything needs to be interconnected within the unit, that's kind of the big thing that's questioned in here. If we wanna then, if that's happening, wanna look at what that means in between, I think that would be just, I don't wanna lump it all together, cause it is very different. And I don't know how many non-student rentals, like right around the university, would be in the situation where they would have to sound between buildings. I think actual like apartment building structures that were built that way, that wouldn't be the case because they're built.
They're firewall.
Yeah.
They meet the 1-hour rating between each compartment. So those are not at the top of my list by any means. It's the single-family homes that have been converted that, you know, some of them are pretty sketchy when you go into them. I mean, and these are ones that were grandfathered in way before our time that I'm like, I wouldn't live here. But that's, you know, and every property owner that I talk to when I do an inspection, that's one of the things I lead off. I'm not here to cost you money. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to walk in and have all passes on everything and leave. But the other intent of taking this role on is, heaven forbid that my wife ever tosses me out and I have to put a roof over my head, I shouldn't be afraid to stay in any of the apartment buildings or rentals in Frostburg. And there was an incident last night. The fire department had a call down on Hill Street for smoke detector sounding. While the fire department was there, the tenant from the neighboring property came over and said, hey, we don't have any smoke detectors in our building. So I was notified by the fire chief this morning, and I addressed it with the property owner right after that. So, and there again, at the time of the inspection, or when they turned over rental, tenants, you can probably attest to this, you go through, I would think, and, your standalone rentals, you make sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. Once they move in, he has no control if they take them down because they're smoking or burning or
And
whatever.
I guarantee you, half the tenants in town
Right.
have their smoke detectors on them.
Well, I did an inspection on College Avenue last week. Not a single smoke detector visible in the one half of the house. And the property owner was with me, and I'm like, you gotta get smoke detectors in here. And the kid's like, oh, they're upstairs. We took them all down because they were going off when we were doing this or doing that.
Because God forbid they tell you the battery's dead.
Yeah, well, no, I think they were, extracurricular activities or whatever were sending them off. I don't know. But they were all upstairs in a closet. And they were all newer they were sealed battery smoke detectors. So it wasn't like they were old and past their life.
Speaking of those, I've had more of those go bad in a year. Like they never last 10 years. It seems like.
Don't buy them on Amazon.
No, but I mean, I'm not
Right.
kidding you. It's like some of them will be in for like 2 or 3 months, and they'll start chirping.
Which I haven't really looked into like
Which brands?
the brands, manufacturers. I mean, your name brands, Kid, First Alert. They're like the two primary standard ones. I would bet there's probably some sort of guarantee on them if they're a 10-year sealed battery. So you may be able to.
What if that's to do with how often they go off, it drains the battery?
I think once they go off, they're done.
No, they should reset.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
I mean, you should be able to just hit the button.
yeah.
Okay,
There's all the new ones have a hush button,
I'll do that.
and the cooking aspect, the newer technology with the smoke detectors are quote unquote less sensitive to cooking. And then there's also placement of smoke detectors. Most smoke alarm manufacturers recommend at least 10 feet from any cooking appliance, 3 feet from any shower, bathroom door to eliminate false alarms. So, but there was one inspection I did the other day, the smoke detector, it was hardwired and interconnected, but it was right over top of the stove. And I'm like, so, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention that we do have an issue, and there's a letter also, a memo that we drafted up, should be in the back of the package, that can be altered, edited, whatever, to explain the situation that I think we need to send it out with like with the water bills or however you all propose we do it. Once we come up with a plan on a timeline and what we're gonna do with this.
Amy, when did the bills for the rental
Right.
registration go out?
Oh, for rental registration?
Or Donnie, when do you get the bill usually for your rental license? Or you-
February, end of the
They
year.
start going out in December. I think.
Yeah.
But could we put it in with that? That would be a good idea.
Yeah, we can.
I
So-
mean, between now and then, I don't have an answer between
Oh, I
now
know,
and then.
I didn't expect an answer tonight. I just wanted to, bring it to everybody's attention.
Because we don't want, obviously, the ones that have already been inspected, they know about it, but the
Yes.
others that haven't been yet,
Yes.
they're gonna need time to convert over.
And
Especially, I mean, a lot of people own more than
Well,
one rental unit.
basically what I've been doing when I do an inspection is, when I do the inspection report, under their smoke alarms, I mark them fail, but I explain to the property owner, this is the situation. Mayor and City Council, we're brainstorming, trying to come up with, something that's not as financially burdensome upon you to make it right. So, I'm not gonna hold you to the 30 days or 90 days, hopefully, within the next couple months, we can figure this out. So we're somewhere heading down the right path.
Let's try and, by the time those bills go out, get this letter ready. We'll start with this if we need to change anything with it, to explain to the property owners so they have time again. Because we're not trying to we're not trying to cost the money, but we're also not trying to cost the money today.
Right,
We have
now,
to go do this right now.
I had a guy on Main Street call me, and he said, I've been in contact with an electrician, I was gonna get other electrical work done, and he already estimated in doing all the smoke detectors. I said, great.
Something else we could consider is too, like, this has to be done by your next inspection.
Well, and that was when we were, in that letter, we were just kinda
Yeah.
hashing out a timeline, whatever. And I'm okay with, if it takes you 3 years to do it. I'm okay with that as long as you have adequate smoke detector coverage throughout your apartment, your building, whatever.
Okay.
I'm good with that. It's just, I can't in good conscience sign off and say,
Yeah.
it's good. So when you all start getting complaints and they wanna tar and feather me and run me out of town, you'll know why.
So the main thing is what we're going with at the moment, based off of our interpretation where it currently stands is, the exception for AC hardwired power still exists because IPMC, our code does not go beyond that. So if you're not doing construction, you can still use battery operated smoke detectors. But they will all need to be interconnected within the unit itself. So that does mean that some people will have to buy some hardwired or battery operated radio ones, which up to about 60, probably 70 at most a piece.
Well, I think, I'll leave this here too if you all wanna look at it.
And it's-
There again, these are just Google searches for different smoke alarms. These Xsense are all standalone, interconnected. You can get 6 of them for $120.
So, they do exist out there, but we just wanna make sure that you all agree with that that's the best interpretation of what it is that they do need to be interconnected, but not necessarily hardwired.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, we'll give people a little bit extra time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty clear that that's what it says.
Right. Yeah, so,
Donnie, I agree with you, because we're not gonna inspect them again until we inspect them again, so as long as it's done by the next inspection would be the.
unless there's a complaint.
Right. And we encourage them to do them as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Food for thought, there you
It
go.
was easier than I thought it was gonna be.
Well, I don't know whether it's easier, but just giving you the information
I
was the
appreciate
easy
it.
part.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
appreciate it.
Moving on in, then, on to, topics for next week's meeting, Municipal Government Works Month. This is pro forma.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, as part of the Banner City program, one of the things we do is recognize municipal government month. So there'll be a proclamation at our next meeting for that, as well as the next topic, which the Frostburg Fire Department is celebrating 150 years. So congratulations to the Frostburg Fire Department, and Mayor Logston will be reading a proclamation at their banquet this Saturday.
Back to the municipal government works, we have in the past had like, kids participate either like, coming to, interviewing, all kinds of things. If I were mayor, all that stuff, are we gonna do any of that?
So Patrick and I talked about that. There are two specific suggestions, and I don't know if they're suggestions or if they are like the options of what you have to do. Either you have to host kids in the building, which like last year Elizabeth brought her kids here and had a field trip, or you have to do the If I Were Mayor essay contest. So we need to do one or the other of those.
There's 3 or 4 things to be at Banner City. We have to have somebody that sits on the board, which Commissioner Grove does. Attend a certain amount of meetings, which we do, proclamation, and then the last thing is something that involves children. So we'll be doing something like that.
I think this year the essay contest will probably be better just because arranging a field trip is challenging.
Well, the essay contest is, I think it was 3 years ago, the girl from our school won.
Yeah,
So it was kinda neat that we had that recognition.
So, and if that's the route we want to go, I can make that happen. I can start working on that this week and get in touch with the elementary folks.
I think think it's second grade or fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
So I can get in touch with them this week, tell them they've got, you know, until whenever our November meeting is to do it, give them like 3 weeks, and then we'll pick a winner, and however we want to do it. Okay. Easy. Maryland 250 Commission.
No, the state of Maryland has developed the Maryland 250 Commission to help celebrate the 250th anniversary of our independence. So the state of Maryland is encouraging programming and celebrations across the state. They're also working to kind of collect all the things that are going to be happening across Maryland in each area. So one of the things we've talked about is doing some things here in Frostburg as well on this upcoming 4th of July in celebration of that anniversary. So in the past, when this has happened, we've put together a planning committee essentially to kind of do some of these bigger events, and the goal is to do that for this as well. So we've talked about some initial people to potentially be on it, but if there's any suggestions or.
Patrick and I just kind of brainstormed a list of people in town that may be interested or may be useful to that. I think we came up with 7 or 8 names. Lydia, good news, you're going to chair this committee as the city's
I can speak to her
representative.
about
Okay.
I'm glad she volunteered for that.
She did. She was voluntold that she's going to be the chairperson for this as the city's representative. So once we hear like who's interested in actually doing it, we can formally appoint the committee. If you have any suggestions for other people that we maybe didn't think of.
Or any suggestions on what that celebration should look like.
Yeah.
So, if there's anything in particular you want to do.
I like the idea of celebrating the National Road, Gateway to the West, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Alright, anything else on that? Okay, looks like D and E are kind of the same thing, Housing Authority appointments.
Mayor and council approves all Housing Authority board appointments. So there is a letter in here for a request to approve Ms. Monroe for a position, and then one as well to continue on the appointment of somebody that's been on the board before. So we'll be doing, if you have no objections, we'll be doing the resolutions for those at the next meeting. One thing to think about moving forward, I met with Housing Authority, they did mention that they've had trouble getting people to act as board members. One of the reasons is that they've been following the City of Frostburg standards of all board members have to be city residents. One of the things they had asked was, one, do they fit into that category because the mayor and council approves their board members, that they have to be that way, or is it just something that they've been doing? And one of the things they did want to potentially see for the future, and they're not requesting this now, just putting this on the radar, is could it be that they have people that are stakeholders in the city of Frostburg? So it may not be somebody that lives here, but somebody that works here, or somebody that.
And they actually had somebody who wanted to volunteer for the board but couldn't because of that stricture, so.
Yeah, but they were very involved in our community just
Yeah.
because, so
Yeah.
it's something that they were curious about. Is that something that they'll need to, stick to, or could we make an exception so that they can fill their board up, because they've had some empty seats.
Well, I was on that board for 25 years, and the only problem I see is if you do that for the Housing Authority, any other committees that we have, you would probably have to do it for.
Yeah. Well, and that was the question, is because this is kind of a unique situation in that it's their board, but you have final say over who's on it and oversight of it, whereas like the zoning commission is very much like it's our board.
It's a city, but, yeah.
So the question was, is this different enough to allow something like that? And I don't know that that's the case, and they even said it may be that they're only allowed to have one of those types of members that don't live in the city or anything like that.
If it's their board, why don't we let them make that decision?
You all have, based on the code, you all have approval of it, and
Oh.
it's their understanding, at least from the past, that because it's something that mayor and council has approval over, that the city requirement applies to them as well. And we could look through the code, maybe the code isn't as clear as it, and they've just been assuming it, or we could potentially change it. Again, this isn't an official request right now, just something to put in mind. We'll meet with them a little bit more and talk a little bit more about this.
Alright, lease agreement for community center.
So as you all know, HRDC leases the community center for the senior center. Our lease expired, our contract expired with them, so it needs to be renewed. What we did last year, and this, I'm continuing small increase year to year just to cover some, inflation and things like that. I think it's a total of like $204 a year increase, so it winds up being about $16 a month each year. With this structure, it would, what they did for this year would be the same for the upcoming year, and then it would increase that amount as it has in the past. Same standard contract, they're very excited to renew, but we'll review that if you have any changes.
Satisfied with that? All right, moving on, bond release for Pritchard Farm, Mr. Lippy.
Yeah, so we are through the warranty period for the most recently completed phase of Pritchard Farms. So we inspected it a year ago, gave them the all clear on the inspection for all of our infrastructure, and it goes into a warranty period. And at the end of that warranty period, if everything is good, we typically release the bond at that point, and this is phase 1A3. Phase 1A3 for Pritchard Farms. Pretty cut and dry, everything is checked out. It just takes a council agreement to say if we release them from the bond, so they can go back to their bonding agency and get that money back.
And we'll have to include a letter to their bonding agency that we're mutual as a draft.
Correct. It's pretty simple one.
Very good. Next, bid results for the fire alarm system.
Yeah, funny how that works. So, of course, I think you guys remember, we've been through a bit of a rigmarole with everything at the Armory building in terms of fire because of insurance. So that is a multi-use, multi-faceted building with a recreation component, an office component, and then a street shop equipment fuel container component. And in order to get signed off on our insurance, we had to upgrade the entirety of the smoke detection and heat sensors for that building, because if you have trucks on one side that could be set on fire, obviously that's going to bleed over into potentially where there are office spaces and a basketball court. So we did everything we could to try and get it down, but we did have to upgrade the system. The bids are in. We only did get one bid, but it was Stevens Electrical, the company who did the initial walkthrough and plan for the electrical. It came in at $82,000. 6 months ago, on the initial estimate, it was $78,000. Of course, prices always go up, so between 78 and 82, it's still a pretty good price. Amy, Patrick, and I have had a lot of conversations about it in terms of what we're going to do money-wise. We did apply for Rocky Gap funds for it. We hope to hear from that today. However, in the instance that we do not hear from them, or in the instance that we do not get that money, it's something we're just going to have to pay for.
Right, yeah. Can't get around it.
We did pass a resolution for this, to spend the money if the Rocky Gap funds didn't come.
Correct. So this one is to approve the bid for Stevens Electric at $82,000. If there are any questions, I'm happy to elaborate.
Yeah, it seems like we have to do it, so. Yeah. All right, next item, Mr. Klink, recommendations for the stabilization grant.
Yes, so I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the grant, but Allegheny County Economic Development, they are providing the funding for this grant. There's a $250,000 pot of money that they want these projects to use all of that money. So what we had done once we received all the project applications, we put together a small committee to review and score the grant applications. Amy was one, Hayden was one, and there were a few people from the county. And so I received those scores. I'm not sure if you have them in front of you, some of you do. So I have these ranked in order of score, and also with the amount of funds that they are requesting. So what we will need is recommendations from mayor and council, and a resolution next week, which just recommendations of which projects and the amounts that you want to fund, and then I will get that to Allegheny County, and then they will take care of the rest of that.
Are we able to do partial funding for some of these, or is it all or nothing?
I mean, there would have to be partial funding. I mean, with it being $250,000, there's more than likely there wouldn't be any
I mean, let me rephrase my question. So for example, just to take the first one on the list, like the Diamond Building, 100,000, would we be able to say like, okay, Diamond can get 60, or is it 100 or nothing?
I mean, you likely could, but when I was speaking to Patrick earlier, if we didn't fund some of these, they may not get done.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Mhm.
But there's also a balance of, if you do all of them at half the cost, it may be that we're offering them $50,000 that they'll never be able to use.
Right,
So
sure.
there's a balance there,
Okay.
but yes, you can.
My question on some of these would be like, what are the plans for some of these buildings? I mean, we know Diamonds, they're putting apartments in. What are they going Lucky's? I heard it was just gonna be a storage building.
I mean, they do have,
The-
well, actually, as far as like what their end goal is
Right.
for them, not sure if they,
Cause that, like, I mean, there's a couple buildings on here that you kinda question, I mean, they've sat empty for
The
10
Pritchard
years
Building.
or better, and it's
Yeah.
like, is there a plan in the future to do something with these, or is it just gonna be money that we give them and it just sits there and does nothing?
yeah, if they gave,
So, and just so you know, you all do have the two-pager application.
Yeah.
There was supplemental documentation that was turned in as well, some of it has some relatively, kind of personal information on it. If you all want full package, Jamie can give those to you, we just didn't think of them necessarily appropriate for, being in here.
yeah.
But I'm not sure that question will actually be answered by those supplemental documents. These.
Yeah, I think I'd like to have the full pack. I mean, you can redact whatever,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
anything that needs, but
Yeah, I will be sure to get that out to all of the council members. I will get that emailed out to you.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, saying what the future use of the facility would be, is that part of the application?
I'd have to look through all of them, to see if they listed that.
I don't think it was a specific question though.
No, it says, why is it necessary for your building? But it's just kind of.
Just so that it doesn't
Yeah,
deteriorate
yeah.
further.
So that we don't step in and tear down.
Well, yeah, you don't, that's the thing, you don't wanna get into another situation like we just had with,
Right.
with whatchamacallit, that we put, not saying we put any money into it, but say you give somebody $100,000, the building sits empty for another 10 years, and we just tear it down anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those buildings are full of current tenants at the moment.
Yeah, we need to think about this one.
So I think the primary intention was to avoid buildings, deteriorating, not necessarily with the, thought of what they'd be used for, or, economic development or anything like that. I think it was more of just avoiding, disastrous buildings. So I don't know that the question was actually asked of what's going to happen next.
So what do we need to do right now?
I guess between now and next week, would have to, just what projects you would want to recommend for funding to the county.
Okay. All right, can you get those packets out to us, like, tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have them out first thing in the morning.
All right, so pending the receipt of those packets, will we have more information, anything else on that right now? All right, moving on. Other discussion items, so we're in, item 6 on the agenda, staffing updates.
So just wanted to let everybody know about a couple of staffing updates. We've had a couple of people leave and some current interviews or job postings are out. So we will be doing interviews for the Director of Community Development this upcoming Monday and maybe Wednesday as well, the 22nd. Mary, that was originally with rental housing, has moved to finance because of an opening there, so we are also posting that job as well. That is open right now. Rental housing just closed and we're reviewing those applications. Then we did have one other individual leave, so we have a custodial position with Parks and Rec. That is open and will close next Friday on the 24th. So we're in the process of working through all those. So we'll be hiring somebody every 2 to 3 weeks in the next month or so. But then I also wanted to mention the chief has a new officer in the academy. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ryan, Mayor and Commissioners. We have a new gentleman in the academy. It's his second week, so he started last Monday in Hagerstown. So all's going well, and we wish him well, and we're really looking forward to him finishing. So it'll be great.
Great.
Yeah, they have their big day Friday, what they call their nature walk, which is a super intensive physical activity. Several of our officers are going down Friday to assist and support him. So.
Okay, good. All right, next is item B, which is bond council loan forgiveness.
Yeah, not a ton of updates there. However, we have taken in bids. Those are with MDE now, getting approval on the engineering and regulatory end. We have been meeting with our bond counsel, and we have met with bond counsel and MDE as a group at this point. And our bond counsel is collecting all of the information, or has collected all the information, and they are quite confident that they'll be able to give us the green light and the recommendation on the bond, especially given the loan forgiveness and grant portion of it, considering there are large grants associated with the project. We're still on track, pending an MDE approval. That is where we're at now. We're waiting on a letter from MDE Finance saying that our budget for each project is approved. Once I get that letter that says these projects are approved, then I can go to my contractors and say, these budgets are approved. However, the work itself is not technically approved. This is a really weird, complicated detail, but as a part of the bond agreement and loan agreement with MDE and our bond council, before we can start construction and before we can get approved for the loan, we have to spend money. So it's going to be weird that we will basically approve a contractor to spend money but not start work, because I have to spend about $50,000 on each project to get the bond process started but not construction. So we will be approving contractors to buy material but not start work. I do want to be clear about that. Amy and Brian and Lydia were all in on that meeting. I think we can all agree it was a little wonky, but that is, I'm not missing a detail there, right? That was the process we looked at.
From my understanding.
Okay, so we will be, as soon as I get this letter from MBE, we're hoping in the next couple weeks, I will be reaching out to our contractors and saying, here's what you can spend money on. It'll be stored materials and mobilization, where they bring in their construction trailer. They'll bring in manhole structures, pipe, things that they can purchase and just store on site, and then we will reimburse them for those costs. And then the loan agreement check will come from our bond counsel, because MDE will give the bond counsel the check, bond counsel will come to us and give us that check. If there's any questions, I can go into detail, but we're on track. So,
I believe you.
There's one little fun addition to this. So, one of the things is the loan forgiveness part of this is tax exempt. Has something to do with the fact that, it could make money and those types of things. It is a much more complicated process to receive tax exempt funds like this. We are gonna have to engage bond counsel more. There's gonna be a lot more reporting on Amy's end. So the cost of bond counsel is gonna go up. We have to find out what that amount is. So far, they're costing us about $10,000. And we're not even really into the process, let alone through the process. They're gonna have to be more engaged because of this process. They encouraged MDE to try to do it a different way, it's not how that works. So, the other part isn't tax exempt, so that will be normal. But then we also do have to report on this for a lot longer. There's more reports from it and things like that. So just as a heads up, we're working on that end of it, but it will be more expensive on that. Bond counsel will not actually bill us for anything until we go to closing. So they just gave us an update on what our bill is so far. So.
And we're also trying to figure out if we can actually leverage some of the loan forgiveness to pay for the bond counsel or some of the grant. We're kind of figuring out the odds and ends on that. hoping that we can at least leverage a grant to pay for some of the bond counsel. If not, potentially just some of the regular loan for that bond counsel, but we'll have details as the weeks go.
We are getting a lot of money though, so even though
Yeah.
it may cost more than
Yeah.
dollar to dollar, it is still a good deal.
Oh, okay. All right. Anything else on that?
No, thank you.
I was gonna make a comment about attorneys, but Chief walked back in the room. All right, keep it going, Hayden.
All right, the big one for me today, and for the council really, is the hydrogeologic study. So we were hoping to hear from the Rocky Gap funds by today, but that has not happened. Total cost for the hydrogeologic study, if they have to do everything, $172,000. We did get one grant already for $43,000. So if we don't get anything else, in the worst case scenario for the hydrogeologic study, if we have to do everything, it would be $129,000 funded from us. Of course, if we get that Rocky Gap money, that knocks another $49,000 out of it, and our contribution is going to look more like $80,000. My take on it is, I think we need to push this project ahead, regardless of whether we get that Rocky Gap money or not, because if we don't start pushing this timeline, we're not going to be ready for the next phase to present a case for the well. With that being said, even if we have to do that $129,000 number, we can afford it. The money is there in the Piney Dam surcharge fund. It's just, the more we dip into that fund, the closer we get to that number where we were trying to build up from. So the money is there. Of course, that is an ever-changing fund, but repairs at Piney are always super expensive. A valve at Piney is a $40,000 valve, whereas a valve back here is a $4,000 valve. So we have the money in there. The current fund, and like I said, it's ever changing, but the current Piney surcharge fund is about 1.3 million. So if we took that 129 out of it, that would knock us down to what, 1.15. And we were always trying to keep it at 1.1 and growing from there. So in theory, everything's affordable. It doesn't even push us into the danger zone. We would love to get that Rocky Gap money, but in the instance that we don't, it is affordable. I just want to be transparent with the money portion from everybody.
I think that this is a legitimate use of it. I agree. We're trying to make that fund go north instead of south, but I think this is a legitimate use of it, so.
Okay. And it would be my recommendation too, to just pay for it and get it done. That way, if I can cut Triad loose and get them in here, it would give us something to present at PASIC for the next phase too. Because that's what MDE, their engineering and their finance groups are big on is, hey, have you done the preliminary stuff? Are your ducks in a row? And we can say, yes, all of our ducks are in a row. Can you please help us with the next phase now?
Do you need another resolution next week, or the one we passed 2 months ago, okay?
We will need one.
Right, so if we have a resolution on Tuesday, you can call them Wednesday and say, here you go.
Maybe you should look at the wording of the old resolution just to make sure.
Yeah, the totals are different, because we're using the Piney surcharge fund, I don't know that we need a resolution, we'll probably do one just to.
Unless you hear, like, tomorrow.
I can call Triad.
But I mean, about the Rocky Gap money.
Yeah.
Their meeting is the same time as ours. They're meeting right now.
Which means they probably won't start sending emails out until tomorrow, so.
So if
If-
you hear
if
about
not
them
next week,
tomorrow,
yeah.
then
Yeah.
we can,
And then I think the commissioners have to technically also approve it, and I don't know when their next meeting is.
okay.
But, I mean,
So it might not get released.
By the time.
The committee that's making the recommendation to the commissioners is meeting right now. I don't know when the next county commissioners meeting is, if it's this
Got it.
Thursday or next Thursday.
Got it. Yeah, it would be my recommendation to approve it at the 129, not to exceed number, in the instance that we get that Rocky Gap
Okay.
icing on top of the cake.
And one of the big things with us moving forward with this is when we met at Mako, this was originally going to be our ask for the upcoming year. But by us covering this and being able to ask for the next step, which is the more expensive one, it happens, a year quicker, we get much further involved.
And it shows, I mean, that we've really put skin in the
Yeah,
game, that we're, it's not just like a wish list.
And if they do it, if they get lucky, it won't cost all 170, it might only cost like 120.
Correct. And Rich has reiterated this to me and Patrick several times, and to the mayor, keeping our foot on the gas with Maryland right now is important with all of this, given the leverage we have.
Good on that?
Yeah.
All right, next, Spirit of Frostburg Award.
Spirit of Frostburg Award. So this is also in your packet if you want to see the write-up for it. So the Spirit of Frostburg Award is given out in the fall, and we are running out of the fall. The Foundation for Frostburg set this up, and they are looking to mayor and council to suggest somebody, for this year's, to be this year's recipient. So, in the packet, which I think is very small, it has previous, recipients. To give you an idea, the most recent one was the coal miners, memorial. But this is the, description of it as well. I am unfamiliar with the process of how mayor and council picked someone last year and previous years.
Just suggested somebody.
So I don't know if that's something you all want to do now, or we can, it doesn't necessarily need to be presented. We talked about presenting it in the November meeting. Barb said she'll need a little bit of time to get the awards together and stuff like that. So I don't know that decision can wait till next work session. But I don't know how you all want to decide. I don't know if you want to send me some names or how we want to do this. But, or does everybody just know who it is? Is that okay?
We had, a couple of years ago, wanted to give it to Barb Armstrong, but we're trying to figure out a sneaky way to do it since she's, it's like, how can we sneak her in there?
Everyone maybe just submit a name to Patrick and see, like, that can be the first step. We start from there.
Maybe we'll get lucky and everybody.
And
just
maybe
send you the
like
same
if
name.
3 or more of us all submit the same name, then that's it.
Yeah, Barb won it one year.
That's not what he said.
Benito.
Barb did win.
Benito.
Did Barb?
I mean, she was part of the coal miner committee.
Oh, yeah, right, she was part of the coal mine.
So the coal miner, the coal miner committee was the most recent one. But I don't know if, John. Yes, I don't know if she's won it specifically, but the Foundation for Frostburg won it for the coal miner.
Yeah, right.
All right, moving on. The ash dumpster.
Yeah, so this is a quick, easy one. Of course, for the past 100 years, the city has provided an ash dumpster for historically coal and wood-fired furnaces in Frostburg, where you can come and dump your ash. I think at this point we have 3 people who use it for ash. We tried to keep tally on it last year. It ends up being about $2,000 a year, and we really just don't see use of it anymore. My recommendation would be to remove that and not order it. I need to order it, I think, by tomorrow to get it. So I wanted to sneak it into this work session and just see if that was something that you guys were comfortable just doing away with.
What's it cost us?
About $2,000.
Yeah, out.
Yeah.
So, where is the next, place that somebody could bring their ash? County?
Yeah, the county. The county, I think, has it. The county has its job. The dump has its job as well. So they can return it.
So the
Oh,
local,
the dump
local
has it.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
county landfill has one? Oh, heck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if everybody's good with that, I will order it again.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks.
Speaking of county landfill,
Yeah, so, not good news, but just something to make you all aware of. We're getting hit with more and more surcharges all the time from the dump for increased costs. They're calling it fuel and environmental surcharges, which is normal, that happens. But it's gonna be an increase to us, not that total of 17.5%, but we're raising our cost by 7.5%. Just something to make you aware of, that it's gonna, that is typically a budget. Our sanitation and operating budget is typically a budget that at the end of every year runs into the red. And it's gonna be even redder this year. So that's more to just kind of bring it to your awareness that come budget season, I'm probably gonna be asking for a lot more in that budget, just so no one's caught off guard. We're kind of seeing this all over the place, it's kind of like chemicals at the water treatment plant. So
Amy,
just-
can you, whenever, see if you can work out a dollar figure for that? Like that's gonna cost each customer $1.50 or whatever.
Oh yeah, actually water rates is the next thing on there. That's more of a.
All right, yeah, that's the,
So, so for water rates, just as a heads up, we did reach out to the county. There's an equation that we utilize, so we are gonna have an initial meeting with kind of our counterparts, normally just to, talk about process and things like that, hopefully in early November. And then we'll actually kind of come together as a city and county in January to start, really, starting that process is how we'll go. Sending me the equation seems pretty straightforward, complex, but straightforward. Straightforward for accountants maybe is a better word. So that is coming around. One of the big things is renegotiating the rate with the county, because we should have
Next, H, recap of the homecoming parade.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Everybody seemed very happy with the homecoming parade. I know we got a lot of good feedback from the university. Athletes seem very excited about it, so I would expect it next year. We'll start planning now, so a little bit more of a leeway into it. I do know that one of the big comments was that it used to be Saturday mornings. Obviously, we did Thursday because it was planned a little bit later, and we wanted to make sure that people were interested in things like that. But there has been discussion about potentially having it on Saturday mornings. That would be one big difference.
We'll have to coordinate though with the high school football teams to make sure that there isn't a game.
Well, they don't
Well,
usually have
They-
games
typically
on
they
They
play
don't,
on
they don't play
Fridays,
on a
but
Sat, okay.
we're hoping that next year it will line up a little more, that FSU's homecoming and Mountain Ridge are either the same week or maybe a week apart or something.
And actually, so I know FSU's football team won't be there, because they have a game that day. But everybody else will be.
I think the main reason it wasn't Saturday morning this year is because they already have their set, this is our homecoming routine, what we do, and there's already so much stuff on Saturday.
Oh, right, yeah.
But with a year's notice, they might be able to rearrange some of that.
And then that would allow for alumni to be in town a little bit more, and maybe draw a bigger crowd. It was a pretty good crowd for
Oh, I
a
think-
Thursday, I thought. It wasn't a Halloween crowd, but it was a good crowd. So doing it on Saturday, the hope would be is that we'd have a lot more people.
Yeah, I had a great time, I thought it was really nice. Alright, Halloween activities.
So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that we are having a Halloween parade again. One of the things we are working with the fire chief and some others is about safety when it comes to fire trucks and throwing candy. We had a fun conversation today about risk management and insurance about that as well.
We mentioned it at the MML course on risk
Oh, yeah.
management, and everyone in the room turned around and looked at us and said, don't do that.
So something that, that we're doing it. Most people suggest not doing that. One of the things we tried with the homecoming parade was having some individuals pace the fire trucks. One of the concerns for the fire chief was that because they're so long and big and they're really focusing on in front of them, they're always concerned about somebody running towards like back wheels when it comes to kids and candy. So we got very lucky because there was one fire truck that was able to show. And the soccer team kind of did that for them. So we'll be looking at volunteers for the parades from now on to kind of do that for the fire trucks. Or asking the fire companies to provide those volunteers. But so the parade
But
will be
everybody
out.
else who throws candy should have better aim.
Well, so it's more about people coming out. Hopefully people in cars can see around.
Well, I noticed signs on the meters that was great. I don't know if you saw the signs that said, hey,
Yeah, we'll stay
throwing
back.
some candy, be careful with your kids.
Stay back. Yeah, that wasn't that. I had, somebody else commented on that
Yeah.
too. That was a good idea.
With that said, we did have a student that has a license fly a drone over the parade, so we got some neat footage of that. But if you watch it, you do see kids. They're not running up to tires or anything, but they're definitely farther along than I want to be. So we're going to look to get some extra volunteers to kind of help out.
I wonder if, and I don't know that we could make it happen this year, but in the future, I wonder if we could get somebody to bring hay bales like they do for Derby Day. Because for Derby Day, they rent hay bales. Like they don't buy them. They rent them for a couple hours and bring them back. I wonder if we could get somebody to do that, put hay bales out, and then just tell everybody stay behind the hay bales.
You'd
So-
have,
It doesn't for Derby Day.
yeah, you'd have a little trouble with people not throwing the candy over the
Far
hay
enough. Yeah,
bales.
that's true. That's true.
So if we did anything like that, what would be ideal would be bike rack, which is what they use at parades.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They interconnect, and the bars are this far apart, so
Yeah,
kids
that-
can't squeeze through them. It doesn't mean a parent will put their kid over it to get
Yeah.
candy, but at that point, I mean.
Well, or like they said, somebody throws the candy, it hits the inside of the car window, and the little bit that goes out of the car is like right here. I've done that.
Well, and there are a lot of kids in the parade, and they like to throw the candy too, and they don't have the
Yeah.
best arms. So finding some other ways to do that, and just make it a little bit safer, make sure we're paying attention to that. But after the parade is at Armstrong Insurance will be the trunk or treat event that FSU Athletics helps out with, and then City Place will be the Halloween activity, so it'll be a big night.
Just so, I mentioned this at the last council meeting too, and I'm not bringing it up as a topic, because I know people what the reaction was, that's fine. But just so everybody is aware, Friday night, October 31st, for City Trick or Treat, there is a home football game at Mountain Ridge High School that night. So just, so when you get questions about, well, what the hell are you people thinking? And just, so unless we want to talk about it, then I don't think we do.
Tell them to come to me.
That's fine, that's fine, I just want to make sure we're all aware.
And with that said, I did reach out to Chief of Police at FSU. They're gonna do their normal saturation patrol for that Friday around the campus, so they'll be assisting our police, officers will be pretty busy between Halloween and the beginning of high school.
Okay. All right, next, municipal services survey.
So this is, and I actually mentioned this today at MML, so it's, the survey's included in your packet. The MML is partnering with the University of Baltimore Schaefer Center, to do, a survey about, services for, municipalities. The goal, which we didn't know about as much until today when they talked about it, was, is to really kind of help people understand what other cities do, so that we can kind of, you know, set some baselines, or you do some comparisons to cities other sizes, so we can start to understand how we're operating a little bit better. There's a survey they put out, I sent out to the, directors to, give some feedback, because it comes from all the different areas. Chief, thank you for your submission already.
Yes, sir, certainly.
First in line, I appreciate it.
All right.
But so we'll be submitting it, and I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of it, just so you can see what's going on.
Hold on, 50, 60, 70?
No, that's the packet page number.
No, it's 75 questions.
Oh, questions, I thought you were
But
looking
some
at
of them
pages.
aren't open.
Yes,
It's-
yeah, that's true.
If this
Skip
is a yes,
around,
go to
yeah.
the next
Okay.
question.
All right. Next item K, microgrid project.
Yeah, this is something I just wanted to put on the council's radar, and, you know, Mina and I can talk about it at some point too, but I am frustrated
You
with
too?
them, and all of our landowners who do not wish to be named, who are a large part of this project, are extremely frustrated with them, because those landowners can pursue other projects, but they are holding their land for us for the sake of this microgrid, whereas they could be taking on other solar agreements from other companies, and I don't exactly know what I'm saying in this meeting, but, before too long, I'm gonna want, no pun intended, pull the plug on this.
Did you, get that email?
I did,
Okay.
but to be honest with you, it doesn't make me feel any better. I feel like they're just slapping bubble gum on the leaking dam to try and appease us.
So I talked with, Mike, Honeyhake at MML, because he highlighted this program from the state,
Okay.
which is what I mentioned
Mhm.
in that email. Mike suggested that I call Stacy. They are really wanting people to get the money from this program, and, so I'm gonna call her tomorrow. I wanna know how our $1 million grant will figure into that, because I do not wanna lose that grant. I don't know, I mean, Optimize Renewables designed the whole thing, so, you know, this kind of proprietary design and all that stuff. We have, I can't remember what that agreement is that we signed. It's not a power purchase agreement, but it's not an MOE, I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, so there might be some implications from that, but at the very least, I wanna hold this over their heads,
Yeah.
that we have options. I mean, I even mentioned in the email, maybe it's time to change horses.
Yeah.
So,
Cause
it's
that's
been
how
years.
and that's how I feel too, and the landowners who we are connected to make this project go are very frustrated, and they keep coming to me for answers. And I have to keep telling them, I'm sorry, have they not reached out to you? Because at this point, it's between the landowners and Optimize Renewables term, because this is for several different people, and they keep saying, no one's reached out to me, no one's reached out to me, and this is going on a year. And I keep following up with Optimize Renewables saying, what's going on, can I get an update? Oh yeah, we're on top of it, we're on top of it. Well, that's not an answer.
I have a feeling they're pursuing other things and just kinda like worming way down the list.
Correct. I remember one meeting we had with them, they said that it's a total of about a $40 million project, and we're at 1.5 million of it. So it's a cumulative project, I guess, across the state, or across the tri-state, and I know we're just a small piece of it.
So
Maybe
they're
working
they're
on
trying to
other
leverage,
ways.
I think, like
Yeah.
all these different things, but in the meantime, I mean, we could have been having solar for years and offsetting, you know, our costs.
Exactly, and that's how our other landowners feel too.
Yeah.
That they're holding it as a favor to us, to help us at the city, and I keep having to tell them, hey, I appreciate that, thank you, I have no answer for you, so.
And it wasn't exactly easy to get them all on board.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, that's just to put that on your radar,
So we're meeting with them on Thursday. The time's okay for you?
it should be, yeah.
What he said, 11:30 or something.
But yeah, I mean, I intend to be fairly straightforward in that meeting.
But, yeah, please do.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, especially because you're, you know, you've got this personal relationship with the landowners.
Yeah.
You're putting your own reputation on the line.
So, just so everyone's aware. Appreciate it.
All right, last thing on the agenda is FY '27 budget process.
So, one of the things I just want to let everybody know is, I've been working with Amy on, reviewing some budget things. Also as part of my, certified public manager class, we have capstone, and what we talked about doing was focusing on budget, issues. So, one of the things that we're working on this year is trying to, provide a little bit more clarity on budget line items. So I know a lot of times prices will adjust or go up, and, I'm not always completely clear on why or where that's coming from. The goal is to kind of have a more transparent and more informed budget. So we'll be working on that. If there is any input you all have on what you would like to have more information on when it comes to budget and things like that ahead of time, please let me know sooner than later, because we're going to start kind of working with that process. But the goal is to make it so that you have a just better informed when you can make decisions.
Thanks.
Anything to add on that? No? Anything else for the good of the order?
I have one, we do.
So this is food pantry related. Lydia and I have been bouncing back and forth with this project, trying to make it go for quite a while. We do officially have 3 quotes for the portion of the building that our guys aren't going to be able to get done before the winter. And we do have the funds for this project. So 3 quotes. Daystar came in, and these are all, this is not a sealed bid process, but this is just calling quote. Daystar came in at $28,000. Brierside came in at $15,000, and Kaufman's said they could do it for about $10,500. Complicating factor is Kaufman's doesn't do earthwork. Brierside and Daystar's contract contains the earthwork, and then Kaufman's doesn't think that they could start until potentially January, February. And I have heard through the grapevine that it might be March. Brierside called me last week and said that they could start next week, this coming Monday,
Oh.
if we cut them loose.
What's it gonna cost if we do the earthwork ourselves? I mean, let me rephrase. Can our guys do it, or we have to get another contractor?
Well, that's kind of the whole thing. I think our guys could do it, but we just don't have the time.
So,
Yeah. So,
so for 4,500, they're gonna do the earthwork too?
yeah.
Seems easy for me.
Yeah.
That's why. Normally this is one of those things where I would just cut loose on it, but given that it's not technically the lowest bid, I just wanted to make sure that that was okay with everybody before I did that. So, and we do have a good working relationship with Kaufman, and I don't want to sour that relationship, but I'm just gonna call Bob.
Because they can't do the earthwork and they can't do.
Yeah, and
Yeah, we
gonna-
wanted it done, or at least under roof before
Yeah.
winter.
So I'm gonna call Bob and just say, hey, I need this done, and give him the earthwork portion of it. So, but as long as you're okay with that.
The big thing is the time you allow our crews to get in and do stuff while it's cold.
Correct. Yeah.
That's good, easy enough.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Meeting adjourned.